Hello, I'm Brian Martin, and I'm here to share with you the gospel lesson for the third Sunday of Advent. That's December 15th, 2019. The gospel lesson is Matthew chapter 11, verses 2 through 11. It is when the imprisoned John the Baptizer sends a delegation to Jesus questioning if Jesus is the Messiah. And in every episode that I share with you, we always talk about what was Jesus thinking. And that gives us great insight into what's going on in our world. Take a moment to share with you my book. This is the latest book that I've written, Eternity is the E in Love. It's experiencing meaning and changing the world with the power of love by me. And this is available on Amazon, along with my kindness book and my book about having a practically perfect relationship. So let's get into this one. This is a really wonderful story, and it's masterfully worked through by Jesus. And gosh, I wish that you and I had the ability to deal with people the way that he did and to think about situations the way that he thought about them. Matthew 11, verses 2 through 11. When John heard in prison that what the Messiah was doing, he sent word to by his disciples. And he said to him, "Are you the one who is coming, or are we to wait for another?" So that's a very pointed question that comes from John. And you can only imagine what's going through John's mind and through the minds of John's disciples as John is in prison and he is trying to figure out all these things that he's been working so hard for his whole life. And here's Jesus' answer. It's quite amazing. Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and what you see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." And then Jesus adds this, "And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." As they went their way, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. So apparently this was an open, I want to say confrontation is the first word that comes to my mind, but it's an open inquiry when there's people around, a crowd around, when Jesus responds to this question. Actually, it's kind of like one of those press conferences when they ask the difficult questions and the person who is being questioned has to give a response off the top of their head. That, takes into consideration what the delegation is asking, at the same time wants to be careful about what they say, and so that it's received in a correct manner. And so about John, Jesus says this, "What then did you go out to see?" That is, when they went out to the wilderness to see John, because John was in the wilderness down by the Jordan River, and people would come from all over and they would see him. What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. So no, obviously you didn't go out to see somebody in soft robes. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. So Jesus, in this particular passage, has an esteemed opinion about John and his role. This is the one about whom it is written, "See, I'm sending my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you." Truly, I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Wow, that's a fantastic, glowing report on the one hand, and please notice what that one word "yet" does. When he says, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist. Yet, that yet acts as a negation of anything that was said before, because what is going to come after is really profound and meaningful. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he is. Wow, what a dramatic and a decisive thing to say. So this passage that Jesus quoted from, well, he alluded to, is from the Old Testament, from the prophet Isaiah. And when Jesus says, take this back to John the Baptist and tell him what you are seeing and what you're hearing, what Jesus is doing is saying, take a look at what I am doing. Judge me by what I am doing, not necessarily by what I'm saying. I like this because what Jesus is doing in this passage, or what he does, is that he uses his gifts and his skills and his talents and his tools to the highest degree that he can possibly use them. I have grandsons who wrestle, and they go all over the country wrestling, and they are profoundly good wrestlers, ranked very high in all the rankings. Yesterday there was a wrestling match, and two of my grandsons were wrestling, and one of their friends and some of their teammates were wrestling. And one of my grandsons didn't lose a match. In fact, he took control of every individual that he was wrestling with, and he won the tournament. Not only did he win the tournament, but he was pronounced the best player of the tournament for his effectiveness. The other grandson lost a match, as well as did another teammate, lost the match. And the one grandson who won the tournament was angry. And he approached the two who lost their matches and said, "What's the matter with you?" And he read them the riot act. He said, "I am your wrestling partner." And he was chastising them because they weren't using their gifts, their skills, and their talents and their tools to the high level that he did on that day. Now, that's a wonderful family story, and I'm so glad that I get to share that with you. But I'm sharing it with you because this is exactly what Jesus did. He used his gifts and his skills, his talents and his tools to the highest level possible. So much so that he was differentiated among all the others, and he stood out. He stood out so much that John had to find out more about him. And Jesus' response was a classic response. Look what I've done. Look what I'm doing. Here. And he gave a catalog of events that what he was accomplishing. Take that back and tell John. Let that satisfy John. Well, John was no slouch himself, and he didn't lose a match. But because of his effectiveness, he found himself in a prison. And that prison he would never leave. So he used his gifts and his skills and his talents and his tools, always envisioning that something was going to happen in the universe. And he was looking to Jesus to be that one. I sometimes think that if Jesus were to come back today and to walk with us and to talk with us, I think that he would say to us, why aren't you using your gift? Why don't you use your gift to its highest level possible? Now, each one of you, and including me, have different gifts. We're not wrestlers. We're not messiahs. But each and every one of us is endowed with, and we have developed, particular gifts that differentiate us from everybody else. I had the honor of officiating another funeral. And here was a beautiful woman who was in her 90s when she passed away. And she was a quiet woman. And, but she was quiet to the public, but she was constantly using her gifts. And the person who gave the eulogy said, here are 14 things that you didn't know about my mother that you would like to know. And she read a catalog of gifts. This woman was a wonderful human being. And when she passed away, she had lived a full and a rich life. And by that, what I mean is that she used her gifts. She would have never have said that she had any particular gifts, but she definitely had gifts, and she was differentiated from everybody else by those gifts. I loved it. When I heard the story, I thought, oh my gosh, here is another person who used their gifts well throughout their lives. My question for you today is, how are you doing with using your gift? Some of you are not even aware of what your gift is, but you have one. It's the one that you use every day. If you ask your friends, they'll tell you what it is. Hey, friend of mine, I'm just curious, what do you think is my gift? And they'll tell you. Now, I've done this exercise before, and I'd like to encourage you to do this, to ask other people, what do you think my gift is? And people will tell you. Use your gift to its fullest extent, because your gift is what you're responsible for. Now, there are a lot of distractions in life that will keep you from using your gift. For instance, imprisonment kept John from using his gift. And he had to find out if his gift that he had used was done well. And Jesus gave him a response. He honored him. As the disciples were walking away, I wonder if they could have heard Jesus say, what did you go out in the wilderness to see? Somebody wearing soft robes? And you may know that John the Baptist wore a camel hair outer clothing. And it was rough. He wasn't a soft guy who lounged around. He was using his gift. He was a prophet. And Jesus recognized it. And Jesus honored it. And I was hoping that as his disciples were walking away, if John's disciples are walking away, they got to hear Jesus affirm him. Now, I'm going to finish today by affirming you. Dear beloved person who's listening to this today, you are an amazing miracle. The fact that you're alive today is just an astronomical miracle. Just think of the odds that you have life, that you can hear this today. You are a miracle. Not only that, but you have been endowed with, and you have developed specific gifts and skills and talents and tools that differentiate you from everybody else in the world. And if Jesus were to come and walk along you today, beside you today, he's going to ask you this question. Are you using your gift? Because when you use your gift the way that Jesus did, to the high level that he did, What he was actually doing was that he was loving other people. Every gift that you use and that you exercise is an expression of your love. And it's how we change the world, one person at a time. What's a miracle of astronomical proportions is that an itinerant preacher from a little town, an unknown town in Israel, would end up affecting thousands of people's lives by the things that he said and did. 2,000 years later is a miracle of astronomical proportions. And it should encourage you, from wherever you are, to use your gifts, your skills, your talents, your tools, the way that Jesus did. So I leave you with that. That's a powerful, powerful message from the life of Jesus. What was Jesus thinking? I'm Brian Martin. Thank you for watching today. God bless you. I love you. You are amazing.